Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are navigating some truly fundamental sources.
You really are?
We've put together philosophical texts, deep spiritual insights, and even contemporary research, and they all seem to be pointing to one question. What is the nature of the self? So our mission in this deep dive is to try and unpack this concept of the I am,
Right.
that core, that undeniable presence that exists beneath every label, every title, and every passing thought you might have about yourself. We want to see how these different traditions consistently guide us toward that true self.
And it's an exploration of the absolute essential, really. What's so fascinating in the material is this unified message across millennia
It is.
that the descriptions are only signposts. You can read 1,000 books, you can spend years meditating, but the truth of the self isn't something you just grasp with your intellect. It has to be experienced.
So we're exploring that ultimate, persistent, human question.
Who am I?
Okay, let's unpack this. A good place to start seems to be with some of the ancient roots. Our sources say that every deep conversation eventually loops back to this true self.
It always does.
And to illustrate this, they bring up one of the most foundational references in Western tradition, right back to the book of Exodus.
Right. When Moses asks the divine, "Who are you?"
And the response is, well, it's immediately memorable. I am who I am.
It is. And in English, that sounds like a fixed, powerful identity, like a definition.
Exactly, like a name. But the texts we reviewed really emphasize the crucial difference in the original language.
So wait, are you saying we've been translating this foundational text incorrectly, or maybe just incompletely for centuries?
In a way, yes. When you look at the original Hebrew, the translation also strongly suggests, I will be what I will be.
I will be what I will be.
Yeah, and that radically shifts the concept. It's not describing some static deity defined by a name. It's describing being itself.
So existence that is active, dynamic, constantly unfolding.
It's a verb, not a noun. It defines existence, not a static identity.
That is profound. So the foundational definition of the divine isn't a fixed thing, but this perpetual active existence. So what does that imply about our identity?
Well, it suggests that your core self is also not a fixed identity. You're not defined by your past or your job or even the story you told yourself yesterday.
Your true essence is this perpetual, active, present unfolding.
Right. And this fundamentally changes the whole nature of spiritual seeking, doesn't it? You're not trying to become something.
You're trying to recognize what already is.
And if we take that dynamic existence as the core truth, the sources give this startling definition of what they call spiritual error.
Yeah, the ultimate blasphemy.
It wasn't claiming unity with the divine, like saying I and the Father are one. The real error is denying that inherent being.
So it would be saying, I am not, or I will not be.
A complete denial of your fundamental existence.
It's the ultimate spiritual contradiction. If being is all that is, and you are inherently being, then the only impossible statement is to deny your own presence.
So if we accept that we aren't a fixed identity defined by the contents of our experience, then the challenge becomes,
how do we begin to experience this ever-unfolding self? How do we separate it from all the definitions we've accepted?
okay, if we accept that definition, it makes me wonder, how do we tell the difference between this pure, unfolding self and just, well, our everyday thoughts?
Great.
And this brings us to a fascinating distinction between being aware and just thinking you're aware.
And that distinction is where the sources get really practical.
Yeah.
One of them gives this simple exercise.
Okay.
A teacher asks a group, are you aware? And the group, immediately answers yes.
Of course.
But that yes is a thought. It appears milliseconds after the initial question is processed by the brain.
Right. The mind is playing catch-up. It has to formulate the answer.
Exactly. So then the teacher pauses, asks the question again, and just waits. And the profound point here is that awareness, that simple state of being present, is already there. It's running before the thought, yes, I am aware, even appears.
So awareness doesn't need permission or effort or even a thought to exist.
It's the fundamental ground state.
I can relate this to, like, driving home and suddenly you realize you don't remember the last 5 minutes of the trip.
Yes, perfect example.
The thinking mind was off somewhere else telling a story, but the awareness was still present enough to keep you on the road. The true self was running in the background.
That's it. That ever-present awareness is what we so often confuse with the storyteller.
The storyteller.
Yeah. One contemporary thinker, whose framework we looked at, suggests our reality is made up of 4 basic categories of experience: sensations, feelings, thoughts, and images.
Okay, sensations, feelings, thoughts, and images. Got it.
And everything beyond that quartet is the story we tell ourselves. The moment you add context or narrative or judgment,
Like, this sensation is a bad headache, or that feeling is because of my difficult boss.
precisely. That thought means I'm a failure. The second you do that, you've constructed the storyteller.
And we build this powerful narrator, this storyteller. And that's what we label as the I, or consciousness, or the soul. But the sources are saying the true self is the one listening to the story.
The unmoving experiencer.
But hold on, isn't the storyteller essential? I mean, if I stop telling the story of, I am a host or I am a parent, how do I conduct this deep dive or raise my kids? Where's the balance?
That is a crucial question. And the sources clarify it beautifully by describing life as a play or a game.
A play, okay.
The world, society, systems, history, that's the game. Your responsibilities, your relationships, your career, all your personal drama, that's the play. But the experiencer,
The true self, the I am.
it remains unchanged. It exists before the story even started, and it'll exist after the curtain closes. The balance is in recognizing that you're the player, not the piece being played. This presence is the present moment, and it's always encompassing the entire scene.
That makes perfect sense, but it also immediately highlights this huge problem for anyone trying to communicate this. I mean, the sources admit that language is essential, is what we're using right now.
Right.
But it's also the biggest obstacle to experiencing this truth.
It's a necessary contradiction, isn't it? We're forced to use concepts and analogies to try and convey something that's, well, ineffable. We use words to try and box in an experience that, by definition, has no walls.
We have to rely on analogies that just fall short.
Yeah.
The classic one our sources use is that words only gesture.
The finger pointing at the moon.
Exactly. They're pointing a finger toward the moon, but they are absolutely not the moon itself. Every teaching, every sacred text, it's all just pointing toward that singular I am.
And this difficulty is precisely why the terms we use are so fraught with issues. Soul, awareness, God, consciousness. None of these have true, universal, agreed-upon labels.
Which is why they're so hard to pin down. The word God, for instance, is just saturated with countless meanings shaped by culture, upbringing, and really personal experience.
Right. If you, for example, view God as a harsh father, and maybe you had a painful relationship with your own father.
That history inevitably shapes and limits your entire understanding of the concept. The word carries all this baggage that obscures the truth it's trying to point to.
Precisely. Call it the Holy Spirit, awareness, consciousness. He, she language just collapses under the sheer weight of what it's trying to hold.
And this inability to name the self leads to the central danger, right?
Yes, which is that we pile concepts and definitions and identities on top of the I am until it just disappears beneath them.
It feels like a protection mechanism, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I can imagine listeners wondering if this means they should quit their jobs or abandon their responsibilities. The sources note that many people never ask, who am I, without the labels? Because, well, facing that can feel frightening.
Your individuality feels threatened. The ground feels unstable.
And it's just so much easier to live inside the illusion, to stay in that conceptual matrix of my profession, my family role, my political identity.
It's easier than facing the unknown vastness of the true self. The concepts provide these comforting, predictable boundaries, even if those boundaries aren't actually real. You're afraid of losing the story you've invested so much in.
Okay, so if we agree that concepts are the obstacles, what's the practical application here? How do we start shedding those layers and engage with this presence that's always been here? What guidance do the sources offer?
They propose a powerful discipline, a simple, consistent practice. They recommend doing it before you fall asleep.
In that quiet moment.
Yes, in that quiet moment between thought and rest. It involves asking 3 questions. And critically, you're not asking your analytical, problem-solving mind.
Yeah.
You're asking the I, the awareness, the presence itself.
Exactly.
And the 3 questions are, who am I?
Mm-hmm.
What gifts do I have?
Yes.
And what is my purpose?
You're asking the part of you that knows everything that matters. Your mind might know the details of the story you're living, but the I knows the truth of the experiencer.
And this brings us to what might be the hardest part. Discipline.
Yes.
The sources remind us that we're told to seek and you shall find, but most of us ask once and then we stop when no immediate answer shows up.
Right, there's no instant feedback.
And the material really stresses that true discipline is doing something with no visible results. It's knocking when only silence answers back for a very long time.
It's defined as a breakthrough, not a walkthrough.
A breakthrough, not a walkthrough.
I like that.
It takes this sustained, quiet commitment to override the mind's demand for instant, audible answers. The answers don't arrive as a thought, but as a clarity, a recognition that happens in that silence past all the conceptual clutter.
And finally, the sources bring us back to the concept of unity. Our minds love contrast. We need good versus bad, yin versus yang, to define the boundaries of the play.
But the ultimate truth that the self is pointing toward is that we're not divided. There is no fundamental brokenness inside you. There is only one.
And here we go again with the language trap.
Exactly. We have to apply that warning once more. Even a beautiful, expansive concept like oneness can become just another label if we're not careful.
So the truth is beyond numbers altogether.
It's not one as opposed to two. It is simply what is. No walls, no boundaries. The clarity, the release, the awakening. It all comes from that quiet, internal recognition of who you are, who you've always been, and who you will always be.
This has been a fascinating deep dive into identity, consciousness, and what lies beyond our self-told stories. We covered that dynamic unfolding meaning of I am, rooted in ancient texts,
A critical distinction between our thoughts and pure awareness.
and the ultimate limitation of language. And most importantly, we found some specific guidance in those 3 powerful questions you can ask the self every night.
The entire journey is summed up by that quiet recognition. The realization that the search isn't for new information, but for removing the concepts that are obscuring what's already fundamentally known.
The I am already knows everything that matters.
Exactly.
So we'll leave you with this final provocative thought to consider on your own time. If we accept the idea that everything beyond sensations, feelings, thoughts, and images is just the story we tell ourselves, the play and the true self is the unmoving experiencer, what part of your current life are you willing to recognize as simply the play, rather than the fundamental truth of who you are? Give that metaphor some time to settle, the game, the play, and the player. We'll see you next time for the next deep dive.